My new Pilot VP, vanishing point, sometimes squeaks when I'm writing, especially on low quality paper. It does not feel scratchy though. Should I be concerned? Okay, so this is a pen that's, a question that is not specific related to the vanishing point. So yes, you're having this issue with your vanishing point, which I have the vanishing point Twilight here, which is a limited edition from last year and is amazing and you can't find it anymore. And so I'm being a total tease by showing it. But anyway, so yes, sometimes this does happen with the vanishing point. I find especially for whatever reason, Pilot, their broad nibs tend to squeak a little bit more than some of their other nibs. I have no idea why that is the case specifically with those, but you know, I've run into this kind of thing with nibs squeaking, not just on Pilot, but on a bunch of other brands too. So it's not anything that's like, oh my gosh, it squeaks, you know, it's throw it out. No, it's really something that's not super duper uncommon, but it's, you know, kind of annoying for some. Some people call it singing and they really like it and they want it to stay that way. Other people, it's just they don't really like it and they want a pen that just is stealthier and silent, you know. So you can fix it. So some tools that you may need in order to do that would be mylar and micro mesh. Maybe not both, but very simple. So essentially what's causing your nib to squeak or sing or whatever you want to call it, it has to do with resonance. So it's dealing with friction. So the nib itself is ground just so that when you're dragging it across the page, it's actually causing the nib to vibrate and create a tone, you know, sort of like you have a tuning fork or you have, you know, a bow on a violin or something like that, that string vibrates, a guitar, whatever. As it's vibrating, it's hitting a frequency that's giving an audible sound. So that's what's happening as you're dragging your nib across the page. Now, it's probably happening more on your low quality paper because there's more drag on the paper and it's causing a more extreme reaction on the nib. If you use smoother paper, it's not going to give it as much, you know, resistance, and so it's not going to cause the nib to do the same vibration. But on your rougher paper, that's probably why it's doing that. So basically the key to stopping it from doing that is to just take, you know, an abrasive, a very, very fine abrasive, and then just do some nib work on it to get that out of there. And that sounds much more extreme than it really is. Sometimes literally all it is just like a little drag on the micro mesh or even on the mylar. If you don't want to go as extreme as the micro mesh, mylar could be an even safer way, and you could just kind of touch it on there and do a little bit of playing with it, especially if you're going in one direction, like say you go from left to right, and that's creating that frequency. It's probably your left tine that's causing that problem because that's where it's being kind of dragged across. And so if you drag it in the same motion in very short strokes, so you don't need to put a lot of pressure on it, you just give it a little bit of pressure, and then you would have this flat on a table, but you have a little bit of pressure, and then you just kind of nick it a little bit. You just kind of nick it and kick it away. And that will probably just take off a little bit of that grind so that it would not give so much resistance as you're dragging it across the page. It's really not even going to change the feel of the nib at all, but it would just take enough of that edge away to where it wouldn't drag and then give it that vibration, causing that tone to happen again. So I suspect 98% of the way that's probably what's causing it, and that's probably what would solve it as well. So that goes for the vanishing point as well as it could be other nibs too. I don't know if it's just like the length of the vanishing point nib that it tends to happen more, but I've had that happen on Falcons as well, the Namiki Pilot Falcon with their broad nibs. I've seen that squeaking happen a little more proportionally more on that pen than on some others. But the same principle goes for, you know, any other pen as it would for that. If you just do that little, you know, that little motion on it, I think that would take care of it. Cool. Oh, and one last point about that is, you know, as you're using the pen, it's probably going to wear away that edge eventually as you're using it to the point where it wouldn't squeak anymore. So even if you don't want to take it to you know, to a sheet of abrasive like that, I think it would go away enough on its own, just naturally, as you kind of wear that away from normal use. So if it's something you don't want to do anything to, I think it would go away on its own. Or, of course, you could always, you know, contact us or whoever you bought it through and just say, hey, I want a pen that doesn't squeak, and we could take care of that for you. So that's where I'll leave it off.